The 13-Gun Salute by Patrick O'Brien. Read by Robert Hardy. In spite of the hurry, many wives and sweethearts had come to see the ship off, and those members of her company who were not taken up with sailing her close-hauled to the brisk south-east breeze watched the white flutter of their handkerchiefs far across the water until Black Point hid them entirely. The married men on the quarter-deck of the Surprise sighed and clapped their telescopes too. They were all sincerely attached to their wives, and they all, Jack Aubrey, her captain, Tom Pullings, a commander in the Royal Navy without a ship, a volunteer acting as his first lieutenant, Stephen Maturin, her surgeon, and Nathaniel Martin, his assistant, they all regretted the parting extremely. Yet it so happened that from a variety of causes they had all had an unusually long spell of domesticity. Some had found their consequence much reduced by the coming of a baby. Others had suffered from differences of opinion, from relatives by marriage, smoking chimneys, leaks in the roof, rates, taxes, the social round. And turning, they now looked to the clear southwest, the light blue sky with a fleet of white clouds marching over it, the darker blue sea drawn to a tight line on the horizon, and beyond that horizon, endless possibilities. The men aboard the Surprise were all professional fighting seamen. Some had come from blue-water privateers, some from inshore smugglers, and some from men of war. But they were a hand-picked crew, and they had been together long enough to have formed a distinct community with a great pride in their ship. A somewhat anomalous community, however, in a ship that looked so very like a man of war. For people walked about at ease. There was a certain amount of laughter in the forecastle, and the quartermaster at the con, wiping a tear from his cheek, did not scruple to address Jack directly. "I shall never see her like again, sir. The loveliest young woman in Shelmerston." "A lovely young woman indeed, Heaven," said Jack. "Mrs. Heaven, if I do not mistake." "Why, sir, in a manner of speaking, but some might say more on the porcupine lay, the roving line, if you understand me. There's a great deal to be said for porcupines, Heaven. Solomon had 1,000, and Solomon knew what o'clock it was, I believe." But the Surprise herself was anomalous, too. Although she looked so very like a king's ship, she was, in fact, only a letter of marque, a private man-of-war licensed to cruise upon the enemy. Yet she was no ordinary letter of marque, since government was paying her expenses to go to the South Seas, there to harry the French and American whalers and any enemy warship within her capacity. But the administration's real aim was to enable Dr. Maturin to look into the possibility of helping independent states arise in Chile and Peru, thus weakening the Spanish Empire. Since Spain was England's ally, the aim could not possibly be avowed. This, however, did not worry the Surprises to the least degree. Their recent prizes had enabled even the humblest seamen to play ducks and drakes with gold pieces if they chose. Several of them had so chosen, and they were now paupers once more, though very cheerful paupers, since a short cruise might again bring Captain Aubrey back with so many prizes at his tail that the port of Shelmerston would be choked for the second time. Yet rather more of them listened to their captain's advice. Captain Aubrey was remarkably good at giving financial advice. He cried up thrift, caution, perpetual vigilance, and strict economy. It was known throughout the maritime world that although Lucky Jack Aubrey had quite certainly earned his nickname at sea, making at least 3 fortunes before the last astonishing stroke, he'd also been spectacularly unfortunate by land. Yet among seamen, Aubrey's handling of a ship, his behaviour in action, his list of victories and of prizes, outweighed a certain want of practical management, and his words had great influence. Some of the Surprises, all of them married men with children, retired from the sea, but none had retired very far, and the 7 new inns called the Aubrey Arms, now scattered about the country, were all within easy reach of the Strand. Yet the prudent amounted to so small a proportion of the frigate's people that even when they were added to the paupers they hardly took away from the second anomaly, which was that the Surprise was also a ship largely filled with men who were sailing away under no compulsion, men who had considerable sums at home, and who were setting out on this prodigious voyage for something less definite than gain.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?